Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's market review. This is Fred Razak at CMTrading. Today is January 30th, 2023, and today is Monday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, the U.S. markets taper off after we have that PCE core price index number from last Friday. But first, no major economic events scheduled for today. And going into this week, we've got some major events scheduled. So just be aware, we're tapering off right before these major events. Now, looking at the various markets, we're watching the Forex symbols pretty much taper off into lighter trading zone. So did the indices, the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ retraced. Looking at commodities, both gold and oil also retraced. And looking at stocks, Facebook has been very, very strong and still showing strength on the upside. And lastly, Bitcoin holding its own at 23 and change as it inches higher. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So here we go. We're going to start out with the Euro USD. We're going to see that it's just tapering off. Not much, but tapering off by just about 45 pips. We had a pretty decent run, and it's gone to 109-ish level and then retracing at 108. So there's not major stuff coming out. Looking at the GBP USD also just tapering off, and the Australian dollar just tapering off. And I do expect it to be like that for the rest of the week as we taper off right before the FOMC rate statement this Wednesday night, which is a major event. Now looking at commodities, first looking at gold, we sold off just a little bit to 1923 from 1948-ish level, which was resistance. Those of you who have been trading gold for quite a while will resonate with the numbers 1938, 1948, because we've been in this area quite often, okay, for many a time back in 2020, and then furthermore in 2022 at the beginning of it. Okay, so right now we are trading right here back in this 1923-ish level, but you know, it may retrace at these levels. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Looking at crude oil, we traded lower with dip below $80 a barrel. Okay, so that is retracing. We know that there was resistance at this $81. It did look like it was inching higher, and it did look like it was going to take it higher just because that consolidation was on the upper level and we consolidated there, but then it fell apart, and you could see that it broke that 8-day moving average, and once that happened, it did not hold its own. Now looking at the US markets, okay, we're looking at the Dow Jones first, just dipping below 34,000, and we hit a high of 34,230-ish level, and that's a pretty decent move because we haven't been around there since we had our big run back in November-ish time, December-ish time, where we hit 34,700-ish level. Okay, so that is something to consider going into today as we're going into the FOMC rate statement, and then we're hitting, you know, some major news later this week. So this is something to consider as we're, you know, slowly inching into it. Now looking at the US markets, the NASDAQ also retracing a little bit, but the NASDAQ has been really very strong. I mean, if we look at a daily, it broke above that resistance level of 12,000 and closed above it, which is really very important. Now looking at the individual stocks, okay, we're looking specifically at the tech stocks. Look at Facebook trading at 151. That's a massive move for Facebook on the upside as it's gotten stronger. Microsoft also just around that top range. Apple also gaining nicely to 145, and that's coming out with news this week, so that's an important element. You want to keep this on the radar as well. Tesla, look at that, making its way back to 177. And lastly, looking at Intel, we had, okay, you could see that right there, we had this gap down and massive rise right after this gap down. Okay, so keep that in mind. You know, some of these stocks are coming out with lower guidance, and then they're rallying them. So they're anticipating that, you know, the markets, they're going to make their way back into the markets despite the fact that some of them are guiding lower. Now looking at Bitcoin, we're trading at 23,642, a nice comeback for Bitcoin, but we are hitting some resistance-ish level. 25,000 is a resistance-ish level. But if we pop above this moving average, the 200-day moving average, that will be a turning point for this in particular cryptocurrency, okay? Because that is really a tremendous spot for it. And you could see several times where we broke it, we stood below it, but when we broke above it, we stood above it for quite some time. So keep an eye on that as well. So going into this week, we're going to see a lot of news coming out. It's going to be quiet before the storm, and it's going to start with tomorrow, and then Wednesday is going to be the massive, really, news that's coming out this week. This is Fred Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.